When I packed my bags at 19, my dad didn't say goodbye. He just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me like I was stealing something. Instead of leaving with 2 suitcases and a bruised ego, my mom didn't cry, didn't hug me. She just said, "Call us when you stop being stubborn and come to your senses." I never called. They kicked me out because I refused to work for the family business, a hardware store chain my grandfather started. My father always said it was my duty to take over someday. But I wanted to study computer science. I wanted to build something of my own. He called me ungrateful, said tech was a fad, and told me I'd be back in 6 months, begging for a job. It's been 10 years. And now they're the ones begging. 2 weeks ago, my mom showed up at my apartment unannounced, nervous and thinner than I remembered. She said the business was collapsing, that my father's health wasn't great, and they needed me not emotionally, financially. Turns out their debt's massive, and the failure now own a tech company, worth more than their entire chain ever was. When she said, "We always knew you'd make it big, son," I actually laughed. I told her I did think about it. But the truth is, I already know my answer. The same parents who threw me out for chasing my dream now want me to save them. And part of me wants to help out of guilt, out of the ghost of that kid who just wanted approval. But another part of me remembers the nights I slept in my car, the jobs I worked just to afford ramen, and the silence from them all those years. Now Reddit, if I refuse to help them, does that make me the asshole? After my mom left that night, I sat there staring at the untouched cup of coffee she'd made. It was still warm, but I felt cold, like someone had cracked open a door to the past and all the old air rushed in. The next day she called again. Then my father did. I almost didn't pick up. But curiosity got the better of me. His voice was weaker than I remembered, but not softer. "We're in a bad spot, son." He said, "The business is struggling. The banks are breathing down our necks. We just need a little help getting back on track." I asked how much a little meant. He hesitated, then said a number that made me choke on my coffee. It wasn't a few thousand. It was over 800,000. "You can afford that, right?" he added like it was some casual favor. That sentence, "you can afford that, right?" hit harder than any insult he'd ever thrown at me. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even humility. It was entitlement wrapped in desperation. When I asked why they didn't sell assets, my father snapped, "Because this business is our legacy." You wouldn't understand that? I told him I did understand legacy. I just built mine without destroying anyone in the process. He hung up a few days later. My older sister Emily texted me. "They're saying you're letting Dad die just because you want revenge." That one stung. Emily had stayed in town, helped run the stores, lived under their shadow without ever questioning it. She'd always been the golden child, and I the disappointment. But then Emily called later that night crying. She said Dad had taken out loans in her name without telling her. Their legacy was built on lies. And suddenly, I realized they didn't come to me for forgiveness. They came because they already burned everyone else. I couldn't sleep after that call with Emily. My mind kept replaying her words. Dad took out loans in my name. I knew my father was prideful, but fraudulent, that was new. The next morning I drove to my office early and sat in front of my computer, staring at a blank spreadsheet. Years of working in tech taught me one thing: numbers tell the truth when people want to. So I started digging. I still had access to old company files from back when I'd done a short summer internship before leaving home out of habit. I saved copies of everything, contracts, balance sheets, even payroll data. What I found made my stomach twist. The store chain had been bleeding money for years. But instead of downsizing, my father doubled down, took loans under each family member's name, even using my late grandfather's estate as collateral. There were 5 separate shell companies, all tied together in a web of debts and fake invoices. And buried in all that mess was my name. Apparently, he deforged my digital signature on a business loan 5 years ago, the document showed me, as a silent partner in one of the shell companies. I felt my hands go numb. If the bank ever investigated, one could be on the hook for hundreds of thousands. I called Emily again. She confirmed that she'd only found out when the bank contacted her last month about overdue payments. She said Dad insisted it was just paperwork, that he'd fix it soon. When I told her what I found about the forged signature, she went silent. Then she whispered, "You weren't supposed to know." I froze. "What do you mean?" "Mom said not to tell you. They thought if you found out, you'd help faster." That was the moment it clicked. They hadn't to come to me out of guilt or love, or even desperation. They came because I was their last safety net. I hung up and stared out my window at the city skyline, the life I'd built far away from them. I wasn't just their disappointment anymore. I was their target. I drove back to my hometown that weekend for the first time in nearly a decade. The streets looked smaller, but the tension felt just as big. I parked in front of my parents' house. Same paint, same porch swing, same cracked driveway. For a second, I almost felt nostalgic. Then I remembered why I was there. My mom opened the door before I could knock. She smiled like nothing had happened. "You came," she said softly. "You forged my signature," I replied. The smile faded. My dad was in his recliner, oxygen tube in his nose, TV playing on mute. He looked surprised to see me. "You found out," he said. "Of course I did," I said. "You used my name on a loan. That is fraud." He leaned back, looking more annoyed than guilty. "I did what I had to do for this family." "No," I shot back. "You did what you had to do for yourself. You always have." Mom stepped in, hands trembling. "We didn't mean harm. We just thought if the bank saw your name, they'd distrust us more. You have a good reputation because I earned it." I interrupted. "Without you," my dad scoffed. "You wouldn't have your company if it weren't for the values I taught you." That actually made me laugh. "Values? You mean manipulation, control, lying?" He answer. Then my mom said something that froze me. "We didn't just want the money. We want you to merge your company with ours. That way the banks will see stability and wait. What, you'd still run your part?" She said quickly. "It's just a temporary partnership on paper." It wasn't about saving their business anymore. They wanted to use mine to clean up their mess. I stood there, staring at 2 people who once made me feel worthless, now trying to cash in on my success like it was a family ATM. "You didn't come to me for help," I said. "You came for ownership." And for the first time, my dad looked nervous. I didn't sleep that night. I drove straight back to the city, gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt. I wasn't angry, I was furious. Because I finally realized this wasn't about family anymore. It was about control. The next morning I walked into my office early. My assistant handed me a stack of emails, flagged as urgent. At the top was one from our legal department. Subject: Urgent inquiry from potential buyer re-merger proposal. My stomach dropped. The email attached a scanned letter signed by my father. It introduced him as a co-owner of my company and expressed intent to discuss acquisition terms with one of our competitors. I felt my jaw clench. The date on the letter was from 2 weeks ago, before my mom showed up at my apartment. They'd already been planning this. I called my lawyer Greg. Immediately he asked, "Are you sure your dad, ISNT, actually listed as a shareholder?" I said no then. I remembered that fraudulent document with my forged signature, the one that tied me to his shell company. My father must use that to claim ownership of my tech firm through fake partnership papers. Greg sighed. That is serious, man. If he presented that to investors, it's not just fraud, it's corporate impersonation. Later that day, I got a message from one of my co-founders, Jenna. "Hey, random question. Did you authorize a meeting with a guy claiming to represent your family business? He said he was your partner." That was it. My parents had reached out to my team. The thought made me sick, not just because of the betrayal, but because they were willing to risk everything I'd built just to save themselves. That evening my mom texted me again. "Please don't overreact. Your father just wanted to explore options." One typed and deleted a dozen replies. Finally, I wrote back one sentence. "You crossed the line, you can't come back." From then I blocked her number. I knew what I had to do next, not out of survival. The next morning I met with Greg, my lawyer, and laid everything out. The forged signature, the fake ownership claim, the attempted merger proposal. He listened quietly, flipping through each document with growing disbelief. "This isn't desperation," he finally said. "This is calculated fraud." We started filing motions to protect my company as assets, freezing any external claims to ownership and notifying our investors. Greg told me we could also pursue charges, but that would mean pressing criminal fraud against my parents. And as much as I wanted justice, the thought of seeing them in court made me feel sick. Then Greg asked, "You said your sister was involved in the family business, right?" I nodded. "Because these documents weren't drawn up by your father alone. Someone else helped. These contracts are too clean, too recent. Whoever did this knew modern compliance laws." My stomach dropped. Emily had studied accounting. I didn't want to believe it, but I needed to know, so that night I called her at first. She played dumb. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice shaking. But when I told her we did traced edits in the digital signature logs to her email address, she broke. "Dad made me do it," she whispered through tears. "He said if I didn't, he'd tell the bank. I was responsible for the unpaid loans. I didn't know he was going to use your company." I swear, I wanted to believe her, but the timing didn't add up. The files were dated months before the loans came due. "You knew," I said quietly. Silence. Then she whispered, "We thought if we merged, everyone could be saved. You, me, Mom, Dad, everyone." But I wasn't part of their everyone. I was the solution they were willing to exploit. When I hung up, I realized the family I used to love didn't exist anymore. Maybe it never had. And for the first time I considered pressing charges. The moment I filed the injunction to protect my company, everything exploded. My parents must be found out within hours, because the next day my phone started lighting up calls. Messages, even tags on Facebook. At first I thought it was random noise. Then I saw the post my mom had written. A long emotional message on social media, complete with old family photos and a heartbreaking caption. We raised our son with love and sacrifice, but now that we've fallen on hard times, he has turned his back on us. He has taken legal action against his sick father, instead of helping his own family. Please pray for us. Within hours it went viral in our hometown. Family, friends, old neighbors, even former employees started commenting. Things like, how could he do this to his parents? Money changes people. He has forgotten where he came from. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. The narrative had flipped overnight. Suddenly, I wasn't the victim of fraud. I was the villain. Then came the kicker. A local news outlet picked up the story. The headline read, "Successful tech entrepreneur sues his sick family, says it's all about greed." I couldn't believe it. They weaponized public sympathy, and it was working. My company SPR team started fielding questions. Investors were calling me worried. My inbox flooded with hate messages from strangers. I called my mom, shaking with anger. "You went public." She sounded calm, almost rehearsed. "We had to. You're trying to ruin us." "I'm protecting myself," I yelled. "You forged my name, tried to steal my company. And now you're lying to everyone. No one will believe that," she said coldly. "You've changed too much," she hung up. For the first time, I understood this wasn't about saving face anymore. It was a full-blown war, and they were willing to destroy my reputation if it meant saving themselves. But they didn't realize I still had something. They didn't proof die. I spent the next 2 days barely sleeping. Every headline, every comment, every message chipped away at my patience. People I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly disappointed in me. Investors wanted statements. Even employees were whispering in the hallways. But while my parents were playing sympathy chess, I was building my checkmate. I gathered everything: emails, timestamps, forged contracts, bank statements, even the audited logs showing my father's fake signature attempts. Greg, my lawyer, helped me compile it all into a single airtight report. And then I posted it. I didn't write a sob story. I didn't insult them. I simply uploaded a statement on my company's verified page titled "Facts Over Fiction." It began recently. Allegations have been made about my actions toward my parents. While I love my family, the truth is painful, and it's documented. I attached screenshots of forged contracts, messages where my sister admitted to falsifying records, and legal correspondence proving my parents had tried to sell my company. The post ended with one line: "I'm not turning my back on family. I'm defending myself from people who stopped acting like one." Within an hour, the tone online flipped. People who had attacked me started deleting their comments. Some even apologized. A local business journalist picked it up and ran an article titled, "New Evidence Suggests Entrepreneur's Parents Committed Fraud." And just like that, their narrative cracked. That evening, Emily called again. She was sobbing. "They're saying I ruined everything," she cried. "Dad is furious. He said I betrayed them by talking to you." "You didn't betray anyone," I said quietly. "You told the truth." But even as I said it, I could hear shouting in the background, my father's voice sharp and furious. "You'll regret this," he screamed before the line went dead. And for the first time I felt real fear. Because if my father had nothing left to lose, what else might he do? The call ended, but the echo of my father's voice stuck in my head like static. You'll regret this. It didn't sound like a bluff. The next morning my office security called. U.S. Sure. There is an older man here demanding to see you. Says he is your father. My stomach dropped. I told them not to let him in. But by the time I got downstairs, he was already in the lobby, red-faced, clutching his oxygen tank. Yelling for me. Cameras were rolling. Employees were watching. He turned to me the second I appeared. You think you can humiliate us? You think you can ruin your family's name? You ruined it yourself, I said quietly. He stepped closer, his face trembling with rage. After everything we gave you, you kicked me out, Dad. I snapped. You forged my name, you lied. You tried to steal from me. The room fell silent. Security gently stepped between us. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You're not my son anymore. Then he spat on the floor and stormed out. Later that day, I got an alert from my company's cybersecurity team. Someone had tried to breach our internal systems using an old employee access code, one tied to my father's old business account, from when we decollaborated briefly years ago. The log showed multiple attempts. Whoever it was tried to download financial data, customer lists, and proprietary code. It was sloppy, emotional, but still dangerous. Greg called that night. We need to file a restraining order, he said. This isn't just family drama anymore. It's corporate sabotage. I agreed. But the truth, my hands were shaking. Because beneath all the legal strategy and public statements, there was still a son inside me, the one who once just wanted his dad to be proud. That night, Emily texted me again. He is not well, he is angry. But he is scared. Mom says he is talking about ending it all. And for the first time in this entire mess, I didn't know what to do. Was I supposed to protect myself? Or save the man who destroyed me? I didn't sleep that night. Emily's message kept replaying in my head. He is talking about ending it all. As much as I wanted to hate him, a part of me couldn't. He bear the thought of him dying like that. Not in anger. Not in shame. So I drove back home the next morning. The sky was gray, the kind that makes everything look colder. I found my mom sitting on the porch, eyes red, hands shaking. She didn't even look surprised to see me. He is inside, she whispered. Hasn't he eaten? Barely talks. When I stepped into the living room, my father looked smaller, fragile, almost hollow. The oxygen tank hissed softly beside him. He didn't look at me, just stared at the muted TV. You came to finish me off, he said quietly. No, I said. I came because I didn't want our last conversation to be in a lobby full of cameras. He finally turned his head toward me. His eyes were tired. Defeated. You made sure everyone knows I'm a fraud. I guess congratulations are in order. I didn't want to destroy you. I said I wanted you to stop destroying me. We sat in silence for a long time. Then, for the first time in my life, I saw something break behind his eyes. Pride, maybe, or denial. I thought if I kept control, I could fix everything, he murmured. I just didn't want to admit I failed you. Didn't he fail? I said softly. You just couldn't let go. He nodded weakly. Guess that runs in the family. That was the closest thing to an apology I was ever going to get. He passed away 2 weeks later. Heart failure. No note, no dramatic ending. Just silence. At the funeral, Emily cried in my arms. Mom didn't say a word to me, and I didn't expect her to. Some wounds are too deep to fix. A month later, my company went public. Investors called it a victory, but all I could think about was that last conversation and how in some twisted way he'd even write legacy, ISNT, about what you build. It's about what you leave behind. And I was determined that mine would never look like his.